Can we say something a little bit again bombastic that actually the increase in the balance sheet and the expansion of the central bank footprint was demanded by Main Street,
Well, there's no question. There's no
not Wall
question.
Street.
The difference is Main Street didn't know they were demanding it, but you're 100% correct.
You got it, right? So look,
Can
I
you
mean, this is
expand
a
on that a little,
problem.
Renee?
Hmm. I want to say this in a diplomatic way. I think that there was a lot of post-crisis, the first crisis, 2008. I mean, David and I talk about this all the time. I think one of the most harmful things that ever happened was the trader from AIG that took $100 million home to Long Island, while the rest of the country went to -5, -10% of GDP.
Yeah.
And the rest of the society saw that and said, oh, there's something wrong with the system. I want that. And fast forward a dozen years later to 2020, and I always say that the cost of 2008 were not paid immediately in 2009, 2010.
No,
The
still
cost of
being paid.
2008 was paid in 2020, and the pandemic bailout response
Yeah.
of paycheck protection plan and literal income transfers on mass scale that boosted debt to GDP to unsustainable levels, right? Wall Street didn't ask for that. Main Street asked for that, right? I mean, to get theological about it, and David and I always talk about this is the 10th commandment issue, right? Thou shalt not covet your neighbor's house and right, your neighbor's wife and all those other kinds of things. And if you can do that, David has always wisely taught me that if you can follow the 10th commandment, actually it allows you to follow the other nine much easier.
That's right.
So here we are.
You also shouldn't covet your neighbor's grift. And to Renee's point, Ed, I think that Main Street did not look at some of the bad actors of '08 and say, this is unjust. That was bad what they did. They looked at it and said, I want in on that.
Too.
And I also believe that on a more basic kitchen table economic level, the benefits of QE, you can argue that zero interest rates accrued to Wall Street. There's no question that it accrued to certain big cap public companies with enhanced valuation, additional liquidity, and less incentive to create competitive products that boosted the value of incumbent products in the marketplace. I totally accept all of that. But the primary issue in the immediate aftermath, where we gave birth to QE 1, 2, and 3, was all a coddling of the housing market. It was all driven by a coddling of the housing market and trying to limit the byproducts of what had been a Main Street excess, a sort of orgy of 10th commandment violation. And I think that QE was trying to hold that in, and it took many, many years. And Daniel DiMartino Booth did an excellent session for your conference last year, Ed. It may have been 2 years ago now, about some of these excesses out of the PPP program and into the other issue of getting tax rebates on taxes you didn't pay and this and that. It was all perfectly legal, and it was sustaining certain levels of economic activity, but it was a wealth transfer. It was a wealth transfer from our grandkids to Main Street in the aftermath of COVID, and it was patently immoral.
Hey, can I add one thing here? And this is for all the readers or all the listeners. I would highly encourage you to go on the Federal Reserve System website and look up a speech from then Governor Kevin Warsh. I believe it was 2010, but it was shortly before he resigned in 2011. And the speech is called Defining Deviancy Up.
Oh, so good.
And it is, I will say, one of the great speeches, my own personal favorite speeches in the history of central banking.
Yeah.
And he made this very simple point, which is that what does the society in which the central bank has to operate, what do they require of these democratically accountable institutions, right? And the idea was that, look, do they want market discipline? They meaning the populace, do they want market discipline? Or do they want to avert losses and truncate that price discovery process? And what is the central bank's role in enabling either of those thrusts, right? So there's another Chairman Warsh podcast that I think all the readers should go see, and he did it with a firm called Aven, Aven. It's on YouTube, and to speak about think about how the chairman thinks about life, right? Is was really great in this podcast because he mentioned one thing. He said, "Look, there are two kinds of people that wake up every morning." And he said the first is someone that sees what his neighbor is doing and says, "I like that. I'm inspired by that. I want to do that." And then there's another person that says, why does his neighbor, uh, why is he getting that? He doesn't deserve that, right? So he called this the micro foundations of macro, and the micro foundations of macro meaning what he called the comportment of individuals and how they wake up every morning, right? And so, look, I mean, part of this is how markets in the United States are going to proceed forward will depend largely on the leadership, but ultimately will depend on people's hearts and what kind of comportment that they have, right? And I think it is the central bank's responsibility to fashion and direct in one way or another, and we'll see how it goes.